So I started at Uniting Care Queensland in February 2013, which was the same month that the Royal Commission started hearings. And I journeyed very closely through the work of the Royal Commission for Uniting Care Queensland and was able to translate in very real time the learnings from the Royal Commission as the hearings were going on and the implications that had for Uniting Care Queensland with its vast contact and services and work with and for children. Because we were able to dedicate that resource, we were then able to lend that knowledge and support into the national space. And so we did a bit of work in the kind of policy work around redress and some of the other work that the Royal Commission was doing throughout the period, the 5 years of the Commission. After the Royal Commission reported, in response to the establishment of the National Redress Scheme, the Church decided to set up a national body to be the vehicle between the Church and the Redress Scheme. And that was the creation of UCA Redress Limited. It's a company limited by guarantee. The members of the company are the property trusts and the assembly, represented by the general secretaries. I started in the role as National Director for UCA Redress in March 2019, and that's the same month that we commenced participation in the National Redress Scheme. There were a lot of people involved in the setup of the company and how we were to participate. It was quite a complex thing to overcome all the different legal structures that we have in the Church. And so a lot of work done to get us to that point of entry into the redress scheme itself. So 2.5 years into our participation, and we are seeing for the first time, I guess, that coming together, the bringing together of all of the circumstances in which abuse occurred in the Church for people who are going through the scheme. We have almost 4,000 Uniting Church entities listed as participating through UCA Redress Limited. So that includes all of our congregations, our agencies, our schools, and includes currently existing and defunct institutions for our predecessor churches as well.
I think there's a lot of shame associated and guilt associated with these things. Often the people who perpetrated some of these terrible abuses were people in authority. They were people who had the respect of the community, both the church community or the school community or whatever community that they were in. They were people who the community looked up to. And these people, they were always, of course, young people, and they had, as young people, had no standing in the community, and they somehow felt that they had done something to cause this to happen to them. Because these people were the pillars of our communities. And to say to them, that's not true. These people behaved incredibly badly, and that wasn't your fault. That's on them, and that should never have happened, and that's not the acceptable behaviour that we would say as a church. And so they've got that whole sense of, for some of them, they've carried that for 60 odd years, that somehow they brought this on themselves. And of course the problem is that at the time they weren't necessarily always believed. At the time they weren't necessarily, in fact a lot of them just kept it quiet because they knew of the status of the person and they didn't feel that anyone would want to hear what they had to say. And only many years for some of them later that they actually informed someone. And so the thing that the Royal Commission allowed people to do was to tell their story. And for many people, and many of the stories that were heard there, it was the first time they'd ever told anyone. And for some people, for 60, 70, even, I heard one for 80 years they'd kept it a secret. They'd never told anyone, never told their family, never told their partner. And for some of them, their adult children were hearing about this for the first time. I mean, it must have been a huge shock. And such a thing, but but what an opportunity, and most of them said, I think, have said it's been an opportunity they didn't think they'd ever get.
So I do what I do because I'm absolutely committed to the church being who it's called to be. A community of faith that nurtures, offers opportunity for people to explore the fullness of life, and to do that in a way that is safe, to do that in a way that embraces the fullness of life for everyone. And I think that that's actually really essential to the church's call. And I think the church would say that it's always been essential to that call. But along the way, either through omission or through the dealing with the everyday that gathers momentum and forces priorities on people, we lose sight of the larger picture and we get focused on the issues right in front of us. So part of what I do is ensuring that people have their eyes open to the whole. And child safety is an integral part of that whole. In fact, let me rephrase that. Safety, being a community of safety, being a community that nurtures and encourages is part of that whole. So when I hear that child safety is just about compliance, I suggest to whomever I'm speaking with that if child safety is only about compliance, then we should shut ourselves down. Because if we're only engaging with children for the purposes of I don't know what, but we're having to comply to do it, why would we bother? Engaging with humans is about being community. And all we're seeking to do in building a safe church is seek to be a community that embraces safety. And so what people experience as simply compliance are instead better understood as structured ways to think through how we are safe. So it's not about ticking a box on a form. It's not about just having a risk assessment because some policy says a risk assessment's required. It's actually about helping us to think about how we do this and do it well. And in the end, if people are feeling unresourced, then that's an issue for us all. And a big part of, or one of the projects that our team has been involved in is developing child safe training that will be a resource for people across the church to understand what it means to be supportive of safety in the life of the church. And while it won't go into this is how you fill out this form, it gives people a grounding that enables them to understand purpose.